7 essential Excel shortcuts for management consultants and business analysts. If you work as a management consultant or business analyst, most likely you'll be spending a lot of time on Excel. And it'll be extremely important for you to increase your efficiency with this tool. And there are actually 2 ways to do it. So one way is to know the right formula, and the second one is to know the shortcuts. And in this short movie, I'll talk about 7 essential shortcuts you should master. So I'll show you how to select rows with shortcuts, how to remove rows and columns, group them. Then I'll show you how to move fast around the Excel, how to add hyperlinks, how to see formulas at once, and last but not least, how to reach the menu with shortcuts. Enjoy the movie, and if you want to see more tips, have a look at my online course. You will have the link in the description of the movie, and subscribe to my online channel. In many cases, you would like to work with an entire row or entire column, or even a selection of columns. And for this, we also have shortcuts which are extremely useful once you are working with a big file or you're doing a lot of business modeling. So here, for example, we can try to change the formatting of the last cell, which is the total. So if I wanted to select the entire row, it's enough to press Shift Space. And then I can perform the other actions on this. So for example, change it from bold to normal or change it to underline. As you can see, we can do it faster. If I wanted to select more things, then why I have done this. So first you do the Shift Space, and then you still keep the Shift pressed, and then you move with the arrows up if I wanted to get something which are above, and down if it's something below. I can also press the Control while holding the Shift, and then I basically would get all the, as you can see, all the rows. So in this way, we can take all of them and then, for example, change the formatting to bold everywhere, or simply remove them, for example, like this. So this you can do with the shortcuts. So again, Shift Space to select one. And then if you want to select more, then you keep the Shift and then you use the up and down arrow. You can also do it the other way around. So start with selecting Shift and upper or lower arrow the rows, and then pressing the space. So Shift Space. And then this is how you select the entire rows. With the columns, it's exactly the same. The only thing which differs is the shortcuts we use. So for the row, we used Shift Space, and for the column, you use Control Space. So you press Control Space. Then you, by keeping the Shift with the left or right arrow, you can select the rows and again perform any operations you like them to have. So as you can see, it's very fast because I can do in an instance all the movements. So for the column, you press Control Space, and then if you want to have more columns selected, you press Shift and then the right or left arrow. And for the row, you press Shift Space. And if you want to get more rows, then you press the Shift and then play with the arrows. Let's make a small recap. So to select an entire row, you press Shift and Space for both PC and Apple. Then if you want to select more, you keep the Shift pressed and then you use the arrows up or down. For getting the entire column, you press Control Space. And to get more columns, you keep the Shift and you play with the arrows right or left. Now it's time to see how we can add and remove rows and columns. It will build upon the last lecture when we learned how to select entire row or entire column. So if I would like to add a row, then I have to first select the entire row, so Shift Space, and then you press Control Shift plus. One more time. So you select the row by pressing Shift Space and then Control Shift plus. If you would like to remove the row, it's almost exactly the same. So first you select the entire row, so Shift Space, and then you press Control minus, and we have removed the entire row. So one more time. I'm pressing Shift and Space to select the entire row and then Control minus to remove it. We do almost the same with the column. So first we have to select the column, the entire column. So I press Control Space, and then to add exactly the same as we did for the row. So Control Shift plus. So again, Control Space to select the entire column and then Control Shift plus to add new column. In order to remove relatively the same manner, so again, I have to select the entire column. So Control Space and then Control minus to remove it. As you can see, this is how we done. Let's make a short recap on how you can add columns and remove them. So adding columns and rows is done in 2 steps. So in the first one, I press Shift and Space to select the entire row, both in PC and Mac, and then Control-Shift+ to add the new row. If I would like to do the same for the column, I first have to select, so Control space, and then Control-Shift+ to add it. So as you can see, for adding the row and adding the column, the second step is the same. And it's relatively easy to copy it for removing the rows. So the first step is selecting the row, so Shift space, and Control- removing it, both for the PC and exactly the same formats we have for Mac. For columns, again, Control space to select the column and then Control- to remove it. The same goes for Mac. And as you can see, the second step here and here, so for the row and column is exactly the same. So Control- for removing the entire column or entire row. Quite often you like to group rows or columns in one, so make them less visible, and to use the top-down approach. So for example, in the sheets here, you have the rows I would like to group somehow. And there is a very nice shortcut to do this. It will be a 3-step attempt. So first you have to select an entire row, so Shift space. Then you keep the Shift pressed and then you use the arrows. So here I would use the down arrow, and the last step in grouping them would be pressing Shift Alt and then arrow to the right. So like this. And as you can see, we have grouped it very fast. Let's do it also here. So Shift space, then we keep the Shift, we go with the arrow down, and then we press Shift Alt and then the arrow to the right. And as you can see, it's grouped, so we can go back and forth. Ungrouping is very easy. So again, we have to select the rows we want to ungroup. We press the Shift space to select the entire row. Then we, again, by keeping Shift, move with the arrow down. And then now instead of keeping the arrow to the right, we press Shift Alt and then the arrow to the left. And we have removed. Right, it's adding and left is removing. Now I have still pressed Shift Alt and I can play with the arrows to the right and to the left. You can do exactly the same with the columns. So for example, let's assume that we want to group the column E and F. So again, I have to select the entire column. So I press Control space. I've selected. Now I keep Shift pressed and then I use the arrow to the right. And then I press Shift Alt and then the arrow to the right. And as you can see, we have managed to group those columns. And again, if I'm to ungroup them, I press Shift Alt and then the arrow to the left. So to the right, grouping, and then to the left, ungrouping, provided obviously that you have pressed at the same time Shift and Alt. So again, for the column, you press Control space, then you press Shift and then the arrow to the right, and Shift Alt and again to the right to group it, and Shift Alt and the arrow to the left to ungroup it. So let's make a short recap on grouping and ungrouping. So if you want to group the rows, you should do it in 3 steps. So first select the entire row, Shift space, then use the Shift and the arrow to the down or up to select more rows, and then Shift Alt and the right arrow in order to group the rows. And for the columns, it's almost the same. So obviously we use different formula for selecting an entire column, so Control space. But the rest, as you can see, it's the same. So selecting more columns is Shift and the arrow, in this case arrow to the right, and Shift Alt the arrow to the right to group the columns. In the case of ungrouping, we have the steps almost the same as in the case of grouping. The only difference is instead of having in the last step the arrow to the right, we have it left arrow here. And the same goes for columns. So exactly the same steps as we had for grouping, and the only difference is that we have here left arrow and not right arrow. So as you can see, very easy trick, but it's extremely useful. And you will see in the last part of the course that you can create a very nice looking analysis in Excel very fast by using this grouping and ungroup. Now let's talk about how you can move fast around the Excel using shortcuts. So one of the main shortcuts you're going to be using is the control and the arrows. So for example, if I wanted to go to the end of this table, I would use control and then the arrow to the right. If I want to go down, then control and down arrow, then left arrow and up arrow. So I can do circles like this very fast without too much effort. The other thing I can do is go around the sheets fast. So for this, you press control and then page up or down to move around the file. So like this. This is down and then it's move up. As you can see, you can go fast through the whole file without too much effort. And last but not least, I might be going from one file to another one. So for this, I would use the control tab. So this is the, as you can see, the full version, the nice looking. So marketing efficiency version 2 ready. And now we are in marketing efficiency version 2 empty. Looks different. And now let's go to the another one, which is the new, which we have opened in the previous step. You can also use the Alt tab that shows you all the files. So here you can see all the files and I can pick to which one to go. So for example, I want to go to this one. So again, to the ready one. And another one, not that often used, but might make sense to know it for a bigger files. So you can use the Control Go, and then you can tell him where he should go. So for example, we can tell him to go to T5. And as you can see, he went to the another cell, or we can tell him now to move to Y5000. And as you can see, he has moved there. So let's make a short recap. So first of all, the main shortcuts you will be using to go around is Control and the arrows. So down, up, to the left and to the right, and the same goes for Mac. If you want to go to specific cell, then Control Go for the Windows and for the Mac, and then you put the exact address. So for example, as I have shown you, Y5000, and then he takes you to this specific cell. You can also go to next Excel. So for this, you use Control Tab, or you can open the view with all the files and move to the next one, which is Alt Tab, and it's actually something I would use more often. Now let's talk about hyperlinks and how to put them using a shortcut. So hyperlinks help you go around the Excel you have created, the analysis, extremely fast. So let's go to the ready-made version of the file we are playing with. And as you can see, we have put here everywhere hyperlinks. So if I press here, he will take me to a specific sheet where you have all the details, all the calculation. If I use the back, it will take me back to the master, so where I have all the links. So I can actually travel like this extremely fast without even using the shortcuts I have shown you to get around the file or the specific sheets. So this is very fast, and this is what we're gonna try to create in our file. So here we wanna have a link to Facebook ads. So in order to get this, you would need to create a hyperlink. So you can go into the menu, or you can just press Control K. And once you press it, he'll ask you where you should put the link on. So it can be some other file, it can be external source, or it can be just places in this document. So we choose the second option. And this is where he asks you where he should link this specific area to. So let's say we want to do it to the Facebook. In this way, if I press this, he should take me to the Facebook. And again, having this back helps us go around. I would recommend also in every sheet putting this back. So this is exactly done in the same way. So I have written the word back, and then I have used Control K to put the link here to the master. So once you are done with this, you just copy it everywhere in the sheets in the file. And in this way, you can get around from the master to specific sheets. Let's make a short recap. So in order to put hyperlinks, you just use the formula Control K in the case of Windows and PCs. Whereas for the Mac, Apple, you would use the Command K. That's it for the time being. Check my online course, Essential Excel for Business Analysts and Consultants. You have a link with a discount attached to the description, and subscribe to my YouTube channel.